How's it going, everybody? This is Connor Lavelle, also known as Slight on the Pokemon TCG Cube Discord server. Today, I am joined by Zach Kreckler, Mike Gibbs, and Davi Sousa to do the power rankings for the July and August Cube League. Davi is the Cube builder in this case, so really excited to have him on and get some insight from him. How are you guys doing today?
Good, very good.
Doing good.
Awesome. All right, so without too much delay, let's just get right into it. This time we have 16 players, and as a result, we will have 16 rankings. As always, we will do the aggregate rankings at the end based on the combined ranks of everybody. This time we do not have Slade with us. He's on vacation, and we do have his rankings, though, so they will factor into aggregate. You just won't hear his justification. So, with that said, number 16... I have Zach Corlier.
I have Luigi Nico.
I have One Pint Paul.
I also have One Pint Paul.
All right. Going from the top. So I have Zach Corlier here. He has a cool strategy. He's playing Ryegs, but the Delta Circle on the Exeggutor is a lot weaker because he's not playing that many Delta Pokemon. There are no Cessation Crystal. There's not a lot of Hate Stadiums. He has one Curse Stone, one Desert Ruins, I believe. And he's really shy on supporters. He's got great, like, Delcatty, Pidgeot kind of support, but he might struggle to get to them, is what I thought. Mike, go ahead.
Alright, so I have Luigi Nico. I think that his lines are a little bit, it's like Ampharos and Tyranitar, which could be like a lot to have to deal with or like set up. And I don't think there's enough payoff to make it any higher on the list here. And the support line is a little weak, but not too bad.
Okay.
I don't think the deck's that bad, though. I just have to have something at the lower spot.
Sounds good. Zach?
Yeah, overall, a lot of the decks were pretty solid this time around. I have One Pint Paul in the 16th spot, simply because I'm not terribly sure what this deck is trying to do. Like, there's no real strategy, it seems, that's really going for it. Like, there's Ampharos, but that doesn't really combo well with the other stuff he's got going. The consistency's kind of iffy. Even the Rockets Pokemon are kind of questionable attackers. So for something that I had to put in slot 16, this was the deck I picked.
Gotcha. Davi? Anything to add?
It's most likely he has like some lightning attackers like Rockets Raichu and Rockets Raikou and Rockets Zapdos, but I don't see the synergy between his cards. Like, he probably can win a game or two with just running over someone with a Zapdos, but I can't see him like doing very much with this deck.
Gotcha. And Zach, would you mind hopping over to Slade's tab every ranking just to see what he's got at the rank? You don't have to read off his justification or anything, just to keep up the aggregate ranking.
All right, he does have some notes. For Slade, he had Odysseus in 16th. He said, too much going on, no core strategy.
Okay.
Ouch.
Slade's notes, cut and dry. No, I do feel for Odysseus. So I will say now, he misread Delta Flygon when he was drafting. He thought that he could attach energy to anything, not just Delta Pokemon.
Oh.
And he built his deck very differently as a result of that. So he had a different strategy in mind than I think what ended up coming together.
That makes no
Yeah, I
sense.
think if he would have been able to just attach anywhere, or if he would have focused a little more, say, so it's like Evolution's Flygon. So if he would have had a lot of more of the Delta Eevee, he still could have made it work somewhat.
Yeah, because he could have attached the basics and then
a lot of,
evolved.
like, stage 1 attackers with Flygon, so you can see where he was going if it worked, and it just turns out Flygon does something else.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really rough. Definitely hard to play a league like that. I always encourage people to read their cards, but it's very, very easy to make a mistake like that. So doesn't really reflect on him as a deck builder at all. Moving up to number 15. Here I have Odysseus for the reasons we mentioned.
I have One Pint Paul.
I have Luigi Nico.
I also have Luigi Nico.
And Slade, what do we have there?
Slade has Luigi Nico.
Oh, okay.
His notes on that would be a good rock lock deck, but there are no rocks to lock with.
Yes.
That is definitely what I have as well.
Yep.
Obviously, I don't have him on my list just yet, but I don't really have anything to add to Odysseus's deck. I think I pretty much said my piece there. So, Mike, if you'd like to speak up on your rating this round.
Okay, so I have one pint Paul for basically all the other reasons we talked about before. Just like I don't know like how it really beats a lot of other decks. I think it's just a little too slow. And yeah, basically everything we said before. I don't want to repeat it.
Gotcha. So, Davi and Zach, you have the same player ranked this round. Let's go Davi first this time.
Yeah, he got some good cards. Like it's a classic Tyranitar Force deck, but the lack of ATM Rock really, really hurts. You don't really have a decent attacker. Like once you're 2 Tyranitar fall, Emperor is not a very good attacker. So you start spreading on the early game. Things are going to evolve, and like the game is just going to end for you when your opponent has their best attackers.
Gotcha. Zach,
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
The only other thing I would say there is, not having ATM Rock very much hurts the Rock Lock deck. You can't really take advantage of any of the spread. The other big issue I had with this one was that the consistency also seems to be rather weak, especially with regards to setup. There's only the one Jirachi as a setup Pokemon, which in this format is kind of light. And then his supporters, he only has 5 draw supporters in Copycat and Admin, and then
that's true.
2 Mentor. And then two of his supporters are Hole and Last. So even though he has a decent number of balls and some tricks, like with the POW, not having any real way to set up and then not really having the payoff in ATM Rock that I think this deck needs will make it struggle a lot more than it would otherwise.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right, so moving on up to 14. Here I have 1 pint Paul.
I have Blue Cheesecake.
I have Zach Borlier.
I have Odysseus.
And Slade has Slower Car 42.
Okay. All right. Starting from the top once again, I don't have a lot to add to 1 pint Paul, although I will say we have definitely underestimated his decks in the past. We've been very wrong. Last league specifically, he had an excellent deck. He went 4-1 in Swiss and made top 8 with a deck that I think we had placed below 10 for sure on aggregate. I will point out that Zach was right in this case because Zach ranked his deck much higher, but I think 1 pint Paul could definitely come through by using the deck in a way that we don't expect, or just by using the deck to its fullest ability, and maybe we don't quite understand what that is. Mike, go ahead.
Okay, so Blue Cheesecake's deck. I just don't like the deck that much. I think Blaziken's a really strong archetype, and Arcanine's also is really strong, but I just think there's too much going on, and I think it can fall victim to like Cursed Stone. Although it does have Super Scoop Up, those are flippy and makes the deck inconsistent against other stuff. And I like the amount of ball search he has. But yeah, there's not a lot of supporters in here that help make up for that. Lack of consistency is basically my biggest flaw I see with it.
Gotcha. Zach, anything to add on your rating?
So I had Zach Porlier here. The big problems that I thought this deck would probably have is in terms of initial setup. I think if he gets to the Pidgeot Porygon, he's probably in fine shape. Getting there, I think, could be troublesome. I also think this deck is probably pretty weak if he's playing against something that does not heavily rely on powers, just because so much of his stuff is designed to deal with that. Like you already said before, the Exeggutor isn't that strong of an attacker in general, and really neither is either the Raichu or the Raichu EX if you're not able to take advantage of Zap or stuff like the Cursed Stone.
Yeah.
So I think this deck could be fine, but I think it's probably one of the weaker ones.
Davi, anything to add on Odysseus?
I do think that Banette Evolutions is a good deck in general. It would probably be a better deck if you had focused on Banette and Davis, because like Davis have too many different effects. Like you can control a game or like turn a game on its head, but yeah, the other part of the deck, the Flygon and Meganium part, doesn't really cut out. He probably can win a lot of games with Banette only, but it's not very, very great.
Gotcha. All right, moving on up to 13. Here I have Luigi Nico.
I have Odysseus.
I also have Odysseus.
I have Zach Borlier.
And And then
Okay.
Slade has 1 pint Paul.
Okay, so every single one of these players has at least 3 ratings. Don't really feel like there's anything that I need to add. Do any of you have anything to add yourselves on the player that you rated this round that might be unique from what we've already said?
I do on Zach Sportlier.
Sure.
I do think that you can use Executor for great attacks, not with Hollow Circle, but with Split Bomb. I played a lot of Reags on retro tournaments and such, but you don't really use Hollow Circle. You really want to like spread with the Split Bombs, even like using Double Rainbow, because I know he plays at least one. So like even 2020 spreads are decent enough if you like know the maths and know how much damage you need to do. But even then, like the consistency is the part that kills this deck. Because if you have like 1 Lynette, 0 Jirachi, 0 Mentor, like it's going to be hard to set up and go through like all of your attackers, get all the energies you need, and it's not very good on consistency. But I like the attacking part. I think it's very good.
Gotcha. All right, moving on up to number 12. Here I have Slower Car 42.
I have Zach Porlier.
I have Querts.
I also have Quartz.
And then Slade has Zach Porlier.
Okay. Zach Porlier's been pretty well talked over, but we have Slower Car 42 and Quartz as new additions this round. So I will talk about Slower Car. I thought that his deck was extremely consistent. He has great supporters, he has great support Pokemon as far as basics, as far as evolutions, but he's in a similar boat to some of the decks we've already talked about. He's lacking the tricks and the power cards that would make this deck really good. So kind of the ATM Rock, the Cessation Crystal, the POWs, things like that would allow him to, or even like Healing Shower Milotic, that would really allow him to take advantage of the fact that Tyranitar is a non-EX. I would really have liked to see cards like that, and I think it would have made me rate this deck a lot higher, but as it is right now, super consistent Tyranitar deck, but the deck quality this league I thought was really, really high, and if you don't have any tricks that push your deck to kind of the next level, then I think you're gonna end up ranked a little bit lower this month than you might in previous months. But we have 2 ratings for Quartz this time. So that was Davi and Zach, correct?
Yes.
All right, we will start with Zach this time.
Start with me. All right, so on Quartz's deck, it's kind of similar to Zach Porlier's in the sense that he just really hates Pokemon powers. He's got 3 Muck, which will shut off the powers. He has 2 Cessation Crystal for the times when he doesn't have Muck. I almost just ranked this deck number 1 seeing the 2 Cessation Crystals. That card's broken. But the big problem I think the deck has is that, again, if you run against a deck that is able to set up without the use of powers, I don't see this deck possibly being able to make a comeback in that scenario. The Mugs don't hit very hard. The Mightyena doesn't hit very hard. So if your opponent can just get going, either if they get going faster than he can turn off their powers and just happen to get set up, or if the deck doesn't really use them in general, like he's going against Tyranitar or something, then that's going to be a problem. The other big thing I think this deck is missing is any sort of Gust. It doesn't have POW hand extension, which I think makes the whole Muck strategy fairly weak. It's not like he can bring something up, set it to where it'll get knocked out by poison, bring something up again. Mightyena EX can force them to switch. That's quite a bit different. So overall, I think this deck could end up going very well if he runs into the right matchups and draws pretty well. Like if you can go Ascension, Grammar into Muck, that's going to be very difficult to deal with. But again, like you said, the quality of the decks in this cube are really high. So I don't think he has anything to push him up, given those weaknesses, to where I would rank him above 12th.
Gotcha. Davi, anything to add to that assessment?
It's pretty much the same things that he said. Like, I do think that Muck is a very good card, like the both Mucks that are in the cube. But Mightyena is not exactly the partner I would use in Muck. You can't use Mightyena's power if you have either Muck active. Muck by itself is not a very good attacker, and you need something to attack with after your Mucks get knocked out. And like Mightyena is not doing that. It's not doing a lot of damage, like very rarely, and with a lot of setup. And yeah, the other decks qualities are very high. I can see this deck like winning some matchups, but without a POW. If this deck had like 2 POWs, it would have been so much better. But the lack of POW hand extension is just too great.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense.
Oh, also Houndoom. If he was playing Houndoom in this list, it would have been crazy strong.
Oh yeah, Houndoom would have been a great addition as well, for sure.
Wrong dog hair.
Moving up to 11. Here I have Blue Cheesecake.
I have slower car.
I also have slower car.
I also have Blue Cheesecake.
Okay,
And then Slade has JL.
interesting. That's a new one. Slade's been breaking new ground on most of these ratings.
Yeah, his thoughts on that one is that Nidoqueen seems like a pretty powerful attacker, and Meganium is an all-around powerhouse, but the lines are a little thin for my liking.
Makes a lot of sense. So here for Blue Cheesecake, he's playing Blaziken Arcanine. He has a really thick, streamlined Pokemon line, but it might struggle to set up quickly because he has a really low supporter count, I noted. In addition, water-based decks, there's just no real way for him to respond to like a Swampert or like a Latios EX. They're pretty much always going to take 2 or 3 prizes at least, and no way around that. Again, we go back to decks this month being really, really good. When you have an auto loss that you really can't circumnavigate at all like that, it's just going to mean that you end up lower on the list than some other decks might. But moving on to... So we have one other rating for Blue Cheesecake. Let's go over that one.
Okay, I do really like the Blaziken Arcanine deck. I do love the Force Super Scoop Up. If you can like get your Arcanine to 10k hit, Super Scoop Up that, and put another Arcanine on the active and like just stream attackers like that, it's very, very strong. There's some good maths there with Rockets and TEX. Like if you hit a Fire Stream, it's 50 on the active, 10 to out the bench. You can Volcanic Cash something like a Delcatty or a Magneton on the bench, or any like 70 HP Pokemon. So I think that's very strong. The problem here is the same problem as many decks under it. It is consistency. If this deck had like more supporters in general, it would have been very, very strong. But like the other decks over it have more consistency, so they're just better in that case. But the archetype is super good. I love it.
Cool. We have 2 more ratings for Slower Car 42 this round. Do either of you have anything to add that we haven't talked about already?
I don't.
Not really. Just this really could have used some ATM rocks.
All right. Moving on up to number 10. Here I have JL.
I have Quartz.
I have Blue Cheesecake.
I have Slower Car.
And then Slade has Blue Cheesecake. His notes on that were fairly similar to what you said before. He said it hard loses to Swampert. Luckily, there are only 2 Swampert decks. Overall, seems really consistent, but I think Fire is a little weak in this queue.
All right.
Sadly.
As an addition, something we haven't talked about at all, and Blue Cheesecake's last rating is in this round, so I want to address this before we move on. One thing I really would have liked to see in a Blaziken deck is some of the super powerful attackers that can attack partially for fire energy, things like Lugia EX or Rayquaza Star, that you just need like one Holin's Pokemon and suddenly they're swinging for a huge amount of damage. And I didn't see any of that in Blue Cheesecake's deck when I looked through. So I think that is another thing that he could have put in there that would have really boosted him to a higher power level.
Yes.
Every single player this round that we have rated has already been rated. So we'll go over JL just because Slade is the first one to rate that, and we don't have his commentary live. I have JL here because I don't really see the synergy between the lines, between Meganium and Nidoqueen, and I really would have liked to see more of the cards that make non-EX Pokemon powerful. So I would understand using the Nidoqueen line here if he has a bunch of cards like Cessation Crystal, Brinies, Double Rainbow Energy, things like that. And he does have Brinies, I believe, but he is lacking the other ones, and without a significant reason to run Nidoqueen instead of other maybe basic or even stage 1 attackers that would take Meganium's energy and be really happy with it and then do a little bit more with less setup. I think that the Nidoqueen is a heavier investment for not really any better payoff. But it's definitely not a bad deck. I mean, he's got consistency. Nidoqueen and Meganium are both going to help him set up really, really well. And I could definitely see him taking plenty of matches. At this point, like starting at number 10 or 11, I could really see anybody winning a match. And it could be an upset, but it wouldn't be an insane upset. It's not like, wow, I can't believe his deck could possibly beat that other deck. It's more just like, we wouldn't have expected it to win based on the fact that maybe it has fewer options or it's not going to set up quite as consistently all the time. And I definitely think that's the case with JL's deck. Like, I just don't think it's pushing any serious advantages. Would anyone else like to elaborate on their rating this round?
I would also. I think you all talked about Slower Car deck. It is another like rockless Rocklock, but I do think that this one plays the other Dark Tyranitar, the Dark type Tyranitar, and he plays like 2 R energy and 2 scrambles for special darks, and like that card can become very big very fast. Like if you don't deal with it, it can like run away with games. And I do think that that makes a very better deck than the other Rockless Rocklock deck, even though he's not like got the super good cards to use. But yeah, starting now it's like the good decks, the very good decks that are going to be hard for anyone to take down.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, my ranking of Blue Cheesecake here was kind of the same thing, where it's not that this deck I don't think is good, it's that there's just nothing really pushing it over the edge. One thing I would have liked to see in this deck that I don't think anyone's mentioned is if it would have had a lightning energy or 2, so he could have attacked with Magneton. I think that would have helped shore up the lightning weakness.
Definitely.
Other than that, like, it's very much a sort of deck where Delcatty decks are kind of like this, where if he gets set up, this is going to be difficult to deal with if you aren't playing water. Just because Arcanine hits hard and Blaziken hits hard, and once you get Delcatty and Magneton out, you're resistant to Rocket's admin in a great way. But if you can't get that, then it'll struggle. And if he plays against something that can counter that strategy well, he doesn't have a lot of options outside of just straight ahead fire.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I will say, too, that so this is the first time we've had Blue Cheesecake draft with us. I don't know if he's new to the format, but this is definitely a very impressive deck for a first-timer with our league to put together, I would say.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Moving up
to... for Quartz, I disagree with everything. I have nothing really to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Now you can go.
Okay, at number 9 here, I have Deogenerate.
I have JL.
I have JL as well.
I also have Deogenerate.
And then Slade has Deogenerate.
Okay.
All right. I expected a lot of disagreement with this list, and I know we've talked about this before the video, but since decks are so close and since all the decks are so powerful, I expected us to have quite a bit of differing opinion, but it seems like people are more or less on the same page with a lot of these decks.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is a stark contrast from last league, where I felt like the quality was pretty dispersed, but we ended up having very different opinions, and we ended up also being very wrong. So
we'll see if we're all right or wrong in this one.
Right.
I think something about that is like last league was singleton or like almost singleton, and this one is way less single. It's not singleton at all, but you can like lose 1 or 2 cards when looking at an entire list that like changes your opinion. But in this one, it's more or less the same cards on every deck. Like every deck has mentors, Lanettes, admins, etc.
Right.
Right. It does make it a little easier to compare like consistency engines versus consistency.
Yes,
engines.
exactly.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point that you point out, and definitely a possible contributor to why our ratings this time are so similar.
Mm-hmm.
Going into Deogenerate's deck, so we have 3 ratings for Deogenerate this round. He has neat lines. I'd really like to see a Nani X Bayonet, because he's playing a 4-2 Bayonet EX line. Holland Adventurer to go with the 4 Transceiver. He's playing really heavy Holland Transceiver, but there's not a lot of Holland supporters in the deck. And I know that's fine because he can recover them from the discard, but a way to draw cards if he's not behind on hand size, like with Scientist, would be really nice to see. And then more Holland Pokemon and multicolored energy. He's playing like 9 Psychic, and then 2 of one basic, and then another of another type, and he's playing a double rainbow, but he can't attach that to any of his evolutions or his Bayonet, so it's pretty much just for Gardevoir. And I think that it would have been really nice to see more than the 1 Holland's Pokemon that he has for the double rainbow effect to make sure his energy smooths out. Because I think, as it stands, he's going to end up attacking with things like Gardevoir a lot more than he might want to over the evolutions, because he was not going to be able to find the energy that he needs to attack with the evolutions. And then, Davi, you have Deogenerate this round as well. Would you like to elaborate on that?
It's pretty much everything you said out there. I don't really like the Gardevoir line. I know it accelerates your attackers, but those attackers don't have that much health, and you're going to put 2 damage counters every time you use Psyshadow. So that's a 70 HP Banette right there. Like, it's a bit frail. You only play 2, and I think he only plays like 1 Retriever. So 3 Banettes is all you need to win a game. But the deck is pretty strong. Like, it's super aggressive. It's super like full of tricks, and it has Umbreon, it has Espeon. I do want to see it playing because I think he can go the distance with this, like if he plays really, really, really well. But I do think the list could be a little bit better.
Gotcha. And then Mike and Zach, you both have JL this round. Anything you'd like to add there?
With regards to JL's deck, the good thing about this is that the consistency seems to be kind of ridiculous. He's got 5 supporters that search out basics between the Linettes, the Mentor, and if you count the 2 Transceivers, plus a Great Ball. And then Meganium and Nidoqueen both just for setting up are great. Why I think it's only ranked toward the middle here is because, like you said, I don't really think there is much payoff once he gets to Meganium and Nidoqueen outside of just Meganium and Nidoqueen. There's not a ton of extra tricks he's got in here to really push things forward. I think the 2 Brinies could end up being really strong if he can use them with the tankier Nidoqueen and then the Delta Species Meganium. Just try and tank hits and then bounce back and eventually get an advantage there, especially if he's already ahead on prizes from his speed on setup. But it also could be one where there's just not a ton that pushes it over the edge.
Yeah, I could see a lot of these it being a really tanky build, and some people are having a hard time like taking 6 prizes against it because of how much it can heal and stuff like that. 3 Rare Candy is really good, and I like the consistency engine a lot. I think it can really get going.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right, moving on up to number 8. So here I have blue.
I have Davi.
I have blue.
I have JL.
And Slade has Quartz.
Okay. All right, so here I have blue. That's a new addition to our list. I think it's a super strong deck with great disruption items. I think he's got like 4 POW hand extension. I would expect this deck, though, to run into decks that it just can't beat because it doesn't have a good matchup, because it is a very linear strategy. You have 4/4 Hariyama, you have 1 Latios EX as an additional attacker, and then disruption cards, which is a great strategy and super powerful, but I think that he's really going to struggle against anything with fighting resistance. Even though he does have 1 Magnetic Storm, it's not going to be difficult for that to get windstormed away. A lot of decks in this competition are playing at least 1, and some even more than that. And in addition to that, anything that swings for his Psychic weakness is going to be really tough. You know, at this point where we're essentially splitting hairs, and I think blue just, again, is kind of lacking some of those cards that might push him higher.
Right, so blue, I think was probably one of the hardest decks to rank in this, just because it's very unique in that its disruption potential is insane with 4 Rockets admin and 4 POW hand extension. Its comeback potential is insane with that. And then Hariyama EX locking in something like a Curse Stone or a Giant Stump is very difficult to deal with. At the same time, though, like you said, it's only Hariyama. If the Hariyama strategy doesn't work, he doesn't have an alternative. So if he runs into something like Banette or one of the Flygon decks that are resistant to him, he doesn't have a lot of ways to beat those outside of admin and hope the opponent hasn't managed to keep a board state that works. This is one where I think if he hits the right matchups and things go well, this deck could top 4 very easily. Or if things don't go well and he hits bad matchups and things just aren't working out, then it could do much worse. So it's very hard to tell. But
Right.
it's definitely a neat deck. It's one of the more unique ones in this cube.
Yeah, I definitely agree with
I think
that.
it's my favorite deck of all the decks are made. This is the most fun to play. The Curse Stone's really good, and I think if it had Houndoom in the deck, I would think it's the best deck in the entire cube.
If it had Houndoom in it would be insane. If he had some other attackers to go with this, I think it could be really strong. Just something to shore up some of those weaknesses.
Yeah, a second Curse Stone would be really nice too.
Yeah, second Curse Stone, Battle Frontier also.
Yeah. Notably, I do think that this deck has a big weakness to Mew EX, and I know that there are quite a few of those running around. So that may mean that a deck that otherwise does not hit for his Psychic weakness is going to end up actually hitting for his Psychic weakness. So just another thing to worry about.
Don't forget about Jirachi Hidden Legends. He hits for just a cast farm for in the weakness 60 and confusion. It's terrible for any of the Hariyamas.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everyone has the Jirachi.
Yeah, that's good to note, because like you said, that Jirachi is a very popular play, and the Holin's Pokemon are also very popular across pretty much every deck in the competition. I don't know if I saw any decks without even one of them, although Blue's deck itself might not have any. I could see that being a possibility.
Yeah.
Blue's deck. Oh, he has one of the other Jirachi.
Okay.
So yeah, his doesn't. But yeah, they are quite popular, so that could be something to be wary of.
Yeah. But we have a rating for Davi this round. Mike, would you like to elaborate?
Okay, so with Davi's deck, he has like the most setup Pokemon anything any deck has a high damage potential, but I could see his deck being a little bit slower to set up, and the damage output is good but not crazy. I could see the consistency like being like what he can win on, but I don't like Swampert as a card as much.
You really don't think his damage output is that high?
Well, okay, so it does 80-20 for 3 energy. To get the 3 energy on, it takes a lot. Like, you need to get multiple stage 2 set up. I think it could take a while to like get that streamlined.
I will say I
Right.
strongly disagree on the damage point because he's also playing Lugia EX and Latias Star. And both of those cards hit for 150 or more damage. Latias Star against EXs and Lugia against anything.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the key for Davi's deck isn't going to be... I think if he's attacking with the Swampert EX and forced to attack with the Swampert EX, then things probably aren't necessarily going as well.
Well,
But
I think
if he can focus on just the Latias, the Lugia, the Mew, whichever one he needs to go after him and then clean up with Swampert, or do it the other way around, just attack with Swampert first and then clean up with these other ones, then the combination of it's what's going to give this deck strength, not just one or the other.
right, the rotation of attackers, having that Swampert, that huge HP EX that deals really nice, reliable damage for not a ton of commitment, and then those extremely high damage attackers that are a little bit riskier, have lower health, they get hit for more popular weaknesses. There are lots of reasons, high attack costs, that they might not be ideal to use all the time, but the combination of the two is going to make it so that he can pretty much rotate in and out of whatever is best for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand about the slow setup point. I think his supporter count's a little bit lower than I might like. He's got a good supporter count for sure, but I think the damage output is definitely not going to be an issue for him very often, if at all.
Okay.
All right.
So anyone have anything else to add in this round? We also have Quartz and JL rated. They already have been discussed quite a bit, but happy to hear more about him.
I do have a point about JL's deck. He's playing like Meganium Nidoqueen. He has 1/1 Macargo line, but he does. I think he only has one supporter that just draw cards without shuffling the deck. That's one Steven's advice. He doesn't have like TV reporters, Rocket's Mission, Hollows Adventure, nothing like that. So like the Macargo is a very good card, but if you can't draw the card in the turn you're playing it, I don't think it's that good anymore. So it's a little bit less than what I would rank him. I do think that Meganium Nidoqueen is a very, very good synergy deck. The problem being they hit very hard. They are very good with consistency, but they don't have like the tricks. They don't have pulse. They don't have cessation crystals. Everything that it was already said. But the smooth over point was very bad when I saw it. Like no APOMs, no nothing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was something that I did not notice, I don't think, on my first read-through, so good to point out. Moving up to number 7 here, I have Vent.
I also have Vent.
I also have Vent.
Oh my god, I also have Vent.
What is Slade? Do we get the 5?
Oh
Slade
yeah,
does not
please.
have Vent. Slade is
Ah.
blue at number 7.
Boring.
Ooh.
Who does Slade have?
Blue.
Blue, okay. All right, so I think we all have probably similar things to say about this. It's an ultra-consistent Meta Knight deck, but it has one massive issue, and that is that it has one Pokemon Retriever and no Holden Farmer, and only 2 Delta Metagross as the only attackers. And to me, like, he is going to set up every game. He's going to get some great Metagross attacks off. The first half of the game is going to be stellar. But as soon as those Metagrosses go down, it's going to fall back on what attackers are going to come forward and be able to clean out the rest of the game. And I don't know if there's a lot by that, or a lot in that direction. That was why I had it at number 7 as opposed to higher up. I think if he just had a couple more attackers, like Metagross EX or just more recovery, then this deck could easily be like top 3. But just because of that single issue, I think it brings it down quite a few slots.
Mm-hmm. My
Does
thoughts,
anyone...
exactly.
Cool. Does anyone have anything
Yeah.
unique to add to the assessment of that deck?
I mean, I just focus on the consistency of it. As far as the stage 2 decks go, this is easily, I think, the most consistent deck in this cube. Like, having 5 setup Pokemon, 3 of which are Dunsparce, and then working perfectly with those Dunsparce with the 3 Celios and the 3 Hoenn Researcher to find the Dragonair, and then having 4 Rare Candy. Like, I think if this deck, it's going to win just by overwhelming its opponents early, because I could see this getting completely set up by turn 2 and just start taking prizes. It's also very resistant to admin because of Metagross, which I think is really big. But it doesn't have, like you said, anything once, if your opponent manages to stabilize, take out those Metagross, then it's probably going to start to struggle. It also doesn't have a ton of ways around any sort of power disruption. So the Muck, he doesn't have any way to get rid of Cessation Crystal. And if someone can lock a Battle Frontier and play against him, then the entire deck folds. So that's another weakness I think it has. But as far as setting up and just doing what he wants to do, he's going to do it pretty much every game.
All right, Mike, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just don't like how he only has 2 attacking options. I wish if he had more attacking options, this would be way higher. If he had more recovery, it'd be way higher. It's just, that's all it's lacking. But like, early game should be really strong, and if he can win on that, that's how he wins his games. Is overrunning people probably.
Yeah.
Just huge Metagrosses.
Seems like pretty identical evaluations across the board on Vent's deck.
Yeah, deck's very consistent, very good. Is it enough?
So I think this is the first point of real disagreement that we've got so far. I have Quartz for number 6.
Whoa.
And I have Slay for number 6.
Whoa.
I have Deogenerate for number 6.
I have myself for number 6.
And Slade has Vent for number 6.
All right. So my point of disagreement on Quartz here is his deck has so much just hate on powers. He's got double admin. It would really benefit from Pow Hand Extension. I would really like to see that card. But even as it is, you kill something with Muck, you play an admin, you've got their powers shut off pretty much all game. They probably don't have a massive board to contend with you. And I think he's going to win a lot of games just off of that.
Yeah, my fear there is definitely going to be that first part of that sentence, though, like, kill something with Muck.
Yeah, the low attack damage is definitely a concern.
The Muck has Psychic weakness, and the same point as Jirachi. Like, Jirachi is a very good attacker. People need to understand that. You cannot sleep on a Jirachi, like, in the active on energy. It can attack on the next turn if you get, like, Celios for Magneton or Celios for Castform. And, like, hitting 16 Confusion on a Muck, like, you're not retreating that Muck. It's there with the resistance, with the Confusion. And, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a bit frail.
I could see it going anywhere in between these rankings, realistically. It's one of those decks that's very hard to evaluate.
Yeah, that's true.
I couldn't argue it's anywhere from, like, 4 to 14 for that deck.
Yeah, it's really matchup dependent, for sure. So we have quite a spread of ratings here. Davi, you have yourself at this rank. Talk about your deck.
Okay, my deck is, I think I was talking to you, Slight, before the draft. We were talking about, like, building a super big basics, not big basic, but big attacking basics with, like, or Blaziken, or Swampert, or Meganium. I started the draft with one Swampert EX and was hoping to see the 2 baby Swamperts. I only saw one, and I think that's the big problem with my deck. Having one Swampert EX means I always need 1 energy on my attacker to, like, put a Castform and then put another Water Call energy. And that's a little hard to do, like, from my tests. That's the big problem with the deck. I do wanted more consistency too, but I kind of leaning towards more techs. Like, I have Latios tech for Houndoom and for Pidgeot. I don't know if nobody's playing Pidgeot Delta, and nobody's playing, like, a super big Rock Clock deck with ATM Rocks, but it's more for Houndoom then. The problem being the second Swampert. If this deck had the second Swampert, I would, like, put myself way higher. But being reliant on Swampert EX's power to charge my stuff is not very great. And I also have the Latias EX power that does almost the same thing, but it's from hand. It's not the very best option. Like, I would prefer having a second Swampert. That's the big problem with it. But I still think it's very good.
Sure. All right. So Mike, you rated me here.
Yeah. So I like the draw support a lot, but yeah. So basically, it's just like Davi's deck, but it has less Pokemon draw, more supporter draw, and the double Mew EX is really good. I think this deck is amazing and like super good, but I just don't think it's better than the next 5 decks. Basically, this is the odd one out in the top 5. I think it could easily win the tournament though. There's not much wrong with it. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
All right. Cool. We have Deogenerate this round ranked as well. Was that Slade?
That was
Slade. Slade was Vent. That was you. Okay. So do you want to add anything to Deogenerate's deck?
So Deogenerate's deck, I actually really like this deck simply because of the number of different attacking options he has. The Espeon, the Jolteon, the Umbreon, and the Vaporeon. It's a really solid evolutions. I think a lot's going to depend on how it's played. But I also think that overall the consistency of this with the 4 Holen's Transceiver is really solid. And I think that's the key that's going to get him to these. And I know we mentioned earlier something about difficulty finding the energy for the Jolteon, Umbreon, Vaporeon. I think if he can go super early, Holen's Transceiver into Holen last, find a bunch of them. Because once he finds one, then he has Chimecho and he can recycle that repeatedly. And so I think if he can and pull this off right, basically what he could do between the Surprise Time Machine, the Holen Farmer, and finding the right energy is just figure out in the matchup which of these works best. The Net, Espeon, Jolteon, throw weak to Lightning, Jolteon, throw weak to Dark Umbreon, throw weak to Water, Vaporeon, and just focus on that for most of the thing. The Gardevoir, I feel, will probably only be useful as an emergency energy acceleration for these. Most of it, I think, is he's going to have to plan ahead pretty well in order to do well. And I have a feeling, I don't know if he just didn't read Double Rainbow or what, didn't notice the non-EX clause on it, because that's pretty unfortunate. But he does have some neat tricks in here. He's got Super Scoop Up, he's got Surprise Time Machine. He has Crystal Beach, which I think could be pretty strong. So overall, just with the number of options I have, I think this is a very solid deck. Not enough to go above number 6 in my mind, but definitely enough to where I would differentiate it from the decks right below it, where they're consistent, but they kind of do one thing, whereas this thing can do a lot.
All right. Interesting difference of perspective for sure. And I'll be very excited to see how his deck does in the event itself. Moving up to number 5. Here I have Mike Gibbs.
I have Deogenerate.
I have Davi.
I have Light.
And Slade has Mike.
Okay. So here I have Mike. It's a consistent, powerful lock deck. I'd really like to see a second Curse Stone. I think Desert Ruins might hurt more than it helps. And I think decks with low special energy counts are going to limit Mike's variety of attackers because Bayonet is suddenly going to be a lot worse. I know that there are quite a few decks running around the top that aren't playing a lot of special energy, but they are playing Holen's Pokemon instead. Unfortunately, Bayonet's Shadow Steel does not get damage from that. But the plus side, I mean, Hariyama with Curse Stone and just detrimental stadiums in general, extremely powerful combo. Bayonet with Shadow Steel is great against any deck playing a lot of special energy. Raichu EX, or no, he's not playing Raichu EX, playing Delta Raichu, great for hating on powers. And then Lonesome Houndoom, of course, shutting off items and stadiums, being extremely powerful, especially in conjunction with Curse Stone, preventing his opponent from getting it out of play in any way shy of like a Magcargo attack is going to be great. But so any deck that is able to put a Pokemon active or just limit their board to a very small set of Pokemon and trade even to better with his attackers, which his attackers are solid but not amazing, I think they are going to generally have a pretty solid matchup here. So then we have Mike.
So I had Deogenerate.
Yeah.
So I think this deck can 50-50 everything, and it just comes down to like how he draws and how he plays the matchups. I think it just overall is a really solid deck that can, it can realistically beat or lose to anything. I like the EV line a lot. Banette's really strong, and it's a solid deck.
Very cool.
Could easily make top 4. Could easily go 0-5, but like 2-3 or something like that. Yeah, it just depends how he draws and how he plays it.
All right. We have a rating for Davi here.
That was me. So this was the first. There's 3 decks in this cube that kind of have the same strategy of Energy Accelerator plus very strong basic attackers. It's mine, Slate's, and Davi's. They kind of have the same thing. And I think they're all very close together in terms of how good they are. The strategy, I think, is very solid. You get out your, in this case, Swampert. You accelerate energy to either your Swampert to attack with, because Swampert EX is a pretty solid attacker, or in this case, you have Latias Star, Lugia EX, Delta Species Latias EX, which is a pretty solid Pokemon. So there's a lot you can do with it. As far as why it's ranked 5, and I haven't ranked the other 2 yet, I think maybe consistency-wise it could use a little bit stronger stuff. It's kind of a little more reliant on the 1-1 lines of Delcatty, Macargo, Magneton. But overall, like, there's plenty of setup. There's 4 ways to search out the Pokemon to start. From there, you have 3 Celios, 2 Petums, and then draw a supporter out from there. Kind of light, but there's not too much to complain about. I would have liked to see some stuff like POW Hand Extension or just other kind of tricky stuff in here, but overall, it's just very solid. It's another one of those decks that could easily win this tournament.
All right, very nice. And then, Davi, I believe you rated me this round?
Yes, I do think like there's 2 Swampert decks and yours is the best one, just because of the second Swampert. Like that's so different. Like the way you play the game and the way you attach your energies. Like you can put a Mew down and attack with a 3 energy Mew from nothing, like no Mew on the bench, to like 150 damage attack. I do like the spicy attacks. I do like the evolutions. I don't know how useful they will be, but like the options are there, and this deck is all about options. Like it's like mine has more power built into it, and yours has more like versatility and a little bit more consistency. I do realize playing my deck that supporter consistency is more important than Pokemon consistency. Like if I could play more supporters and like, I don't know, not the Macargo, I would. And that's what you're doing. You're playing Delcatty and Magneton. And like it's just a good combo overall. Like everything there is a decent attacker. Even the Hypno Splash Swampert, I think is the name of the attack. Like 4 for 16 sleep is not bad, it's decent. And you have 2 of them to work with. So yeah, I can see you like going very, very far.
Very cool. And to elaborate on the evolution point, I'm specifically playing the line, it's a 1-2 line. I'm specifically playing the Flareon to hit for fire weakness on stuff like Meganium, because Heat Tackle is able to take that pretty clean. It does miss the Meganium EX knockout by 1 damage, but I do have Latias Star to clean that up instead. But it's definitely there more for the weakness than anything, and Espeon EX was just kind of a useful addition that I was able to kind of tack onto the already existing 1-1 line that was in there for matchups where the Psychic weakness might be better, or the Devolution could be really strong. So
Tail Code is also Tail Code. I forgot the name of the attack, but hitting 30 on the bench, like if you play a Swampert EX heavy match where you're building 20 on the bench, building 20, and you like devolve one thing and hit 30 on the other thing with the Espeon, seems like a very good play also.
Gotcha. All right, moving on up, we have Slade. I have Slade at number 4, A.S. Robertson.
And I have the same person, number 4, Slade A.S. Robinson.
I have Slate at number 4.
I have Blue at number 4.
And A.S. Robertson has Davi at number 4.
Woohoo!
All right. So I'll start with Slade. He's playing a Super Scoop Up Flygon deck. Super nice deck. Flygon EX is really strong. Double Super Scoop Up is great to see. Really great synergy. I worry about matchups like Swampert, Blaziken, even Meganium, but to a lesser extent, Meganium has a harder time swinging for huge damage out of nowhere. But Swampert and Blaziken both have attackers that are able to one-shot Flygon pretty clean, and even if Slade gets a return KO, it's not going to be that hard for those decks to come back with another one-hit KO on a Flygon because of, one, the colorless weakness is not great, and also the availability of cards like Lugia EX, Latios Star, and then Mew EX to copy those. So in general, this deck is super strong to me, and the speed and consistency of just being able to use Flygon EX, get its energy in play. It's got double Delcatty to make sure it's taking advantage of that power every single time he evolves, triple boost energy. Everything is there. The only things that I would really like to have seen more are Super Scoop Up, more Super Scoop Up. You know, never hurts to have a higher count of those. And I don't know if this is that possible, because I was really thinking about how to make this deck as good as possible before the league started. Some way to deal with those high damage matchups, but I don't know if it exists. That might just be a bad matchup for you. Mike, go ahead.
So I have the same person as you. Yeah, I like this deck a lot. It has high damage potential, but if his Flygons go down and he doesn't have a response, he could start struggling and then lose those kind of games. But if people can't one-shot his Flygons and he knocks out their only attacker, those are the games he wins. And Lightning decks and Fighting decks will have a hard time one-shotting him because of the -30 resistance. He has both of them. But if you play a good colorless attacker, you have a good chance against Flygon, I imagine.
All right. Zach.
So I had you at number 4. We've kind of been over a couple of reasons why this Swampert deck is better than the other one. I did forget to mention the Davies only has one of the energy acceleration Swampert, which is a huge difference when you're talking about powering up things that potentially have 3 energy attack costs. So that's a huge thing for this. Another thing I really like about this deck is how well it balances its weaknesses. You have the Flareon EX to deal with the Meganiums, which are weak to fire, but then you also have the Espeon EX and 2 Mew EX to deal with the ones which are weak to Psychic, such as Muck, which is the other thing they hit you for weakness. So I think that's done very well. I think the additional focus on Draw Supporter just makes it a stronger deck. This one's also got a decent number of tricks and POW and Surprise Time Machine. Just, again, overall, it's a very solid version of the whole Energy Excel plus Big Basics deck.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Davi.
Okay, so let's talk about Blue's deck, because that one is a crazy one. I do think that, like, 4 Admin, 4 POW, and Hariyama is, like, the dream. If you could get the Houndoom here, it's number 1 deck for sure, no questions about it. The Latios ZX, like, I can kind of see why he put it there. You kind of want to go down fast in the beginning of the game. Tanking EXs while doing that, it's very good. I don't know exactly how many, like, cast farms and magnetons and electrodes he runs to attack reliably with it, because it doesn't have any, like, draw supporters like Pidgeot. But I do think that if this deck, like, falls down to 2 prizes, I mean, if you fall down to 2 prizes, he admins 2 POWs, like, deals with something, 2 POWs again, deals with something else, your game is over. Like, if you have 2 Swamperts in play, if you have 2 Meganiums in play, and he gets a Stadium Lock, a POW lock, and hits you for the Hariyama EX's attack, which takes out cards from your hand, like, that's a 2-card hand you're working with after the knockoff and the draw for turn. So I don't know, like, I think this deck is very, very strong. I do think that you do play only 2 Hariyama EX, and once they die, you can like counterplay the Stadium, you can Windstorm it. Oh no, you always can Windstorm it. So there's more ways to deal with it than the other Hariyama deck, but I think it's really strong. Like, it can get so many wins by just kind of letting the opponent kill something else, and then pow admin, game's over.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Echoes a lot of the points that we were making earlier as well, just with the disruptive power of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the whole round table for this round. Moving on up to number 3. So here I have Davi.
I have Blue.
I have myself.
I have A.S. Robertson, Sleet.
And A.S. Robertson has A.S. Robertson. His comment on himself was Flygon EX was my pack 1 pick 1. I have
Oh my god.
Flygon EX in 1 turn and swing for 100 damage, which is cute, which is huge. So as long as I can hit the right cards, I can be pretty explosive.
Yeah, very true. I think it's
Sounds about right.
He also plays like 2 Ducatis and such. It's like so
Right.
easy to fall down into like, oh, I need to hit boost. Okay, like energy draw 2 times, use a supporter there. Okay.
I definitely think that that's a pretty fair self-assessment.
Yeah.
To go into Davi's deck here, the only thing, so I think what ultimately these rankings come down to at this point is, where do you place the acceleration plus strong, like, toolbox attackers decks? How strong do you think those are in relation to the competition? And I think those are the strongest decks in the competition. I mean, you know, of course I'm playing one, I drafted one very, very deliberately because I think it's some of the strongest decks in the competition, but there are just not very many decks that can deal with getting hit for 150 or more damage back-to-back turns. And that is going to make it so that a lot of decks just cannot keep up with these, even if they set up pretty well, even if their strategy is going well. They just can't deal with, like, an Elemental Blast into a Latias Star attack, or an Elemental Blast from a Mew and then an Elemental Blast from a Lugia EX. or and then even the pressure from Swampert EX, Meganium EX, Blaziken EX, all of those are great attackers as well. I think the combination of those make them the strongest decks in the event. And I think Davi here probably has the weakest of the three. It's obviously a very good deck, ranked at number 3 overall for me. But the biggest thing, it's something that people have said already, the second Waterclaw Swampert is massive. The ability to take a Lugia EX, a Mew EX, Latias Star, and take them from no energy to 3 energy is huge. And especially in mirror matchups, where he's playing against one of the other decks that aim to do very, very similar things to him, there are going to be turns inevitably where his opponent takes a knockout and he's not able to respond the next turn, but his opponent is able to follow up the next turn. So situations like that, I think it's going to make it difficult for him to beat the other 2 top decks. And the last thing is, I think a single copy of POW Hand Extension in these decks is really huge, especially for the matchups where you think you're going to fall behind, or the mirror matchups, and that is missing from Davi's deck, so it's going to allow his opponent to make sure that he knocks out the Pokemon that they most want him to knock out every single time, which can definitely be relevant. But then we have... So, Davi, you rated Slade this round as well?
Yes, I just think that Flygon is really, really strong, consistent. He has 2 Delcatis, I think he has Magneton too. So, like, his draw engine is there every turn. Like, after he sets up, if people don't lock him, he's drawing like 6 cards per turn plus supporter. So you have to deal with that. With a like giant Flygon beating you, like it's the perfect all-around deck. Like he's going to build his strategy every game and do it very well. And I think by far, like if you think about the Meta Knight deck or the other Meganium Nidoqueen deck, this one is the one that does the best. Like you don't have many tricks per se, but you have just power and draw and power, and that's good enough to be number 3 on this list.
Sounds good. So we have a rating here for Blue as well. That is pretty different. Blue's got an 8-3 spread, so you want to talk about that one?
Okay, so I really like Blue's deck. It's a lot like my deck. Davi explained it really well. If you had Houndoom, it'd be best deck for sure. Quad 4 POW Hand Extension is really good. Like you're always just gonna find it whenever you need it, pretty much if you're behind. So he's gonna be able to take out whatever he wants, and when he falls behind, he easily can climb back into any game. And Curse Stone's really good, and I just see his deck doing very well.
Zach, you have yourself here.
All right, I have me. So I'm also playing a Energy Acceleration plus Basic Attackers deck. Mine is the best because it contains Cessation Crystal. But more seriously, like I think Meganium is just naturally stronger than Swampert, and that gives this deck a huge advantage. Nurture and Heal, being able to attack not just to the active but to the bench, gives the deck a lot more flexibility potential as far as attackers, and the Evolutionary Call Meganium is insane. Like as far as setup goes, you get one of those and then you are set up because you have everything. I think my deck did manage to put together quite a few tricks in it, which should give it an advantage. I think, the Cessation Crystal, like I've said, but then also having stuff like Battle Frontier, 3 Rockets Admin, I think is really strong. Price Time Machine is good. The Mr. Brightness Compassion, I think, is strong.
You play 4 Jirachi in your deck.
And yeah, that was the next thing I was going to get to. The fact that I have the 4 Jirachi. So the setup for this deck, I think, is designed very well, in that it's 4 Jirachi, then 4 ways to search out the basics, and then just immediately evolve into Delcatty or Bayleaf, and then the following turn into Meganium, and then just go from there. And then I think the weaknesses are shored up pretty well with the Muse, since that covers Psychic, Water, and Fire. Overall, the number of types I can attack with this deck is pretty substantial. Fighting, Grass, Lightning with Magneton, which is actually a pretty solid attacker, and then Psychic, Fire, and Water. So that covers most of the thing. In theory, I can use Delcatty too, but it's a bit weaker. Where I think this deck could end up struggling is that, unlike the 2 Swampert decks, I don't actually have a Latias or Lugia or something myself that can generate a huge damage output just out of nowhere. I can't go from nothing to 150 unless my opponent happens to have something on the board or I'm able to take advantage of weakness. Where the good thing is, though, Meganium is a very tanky deck. So if my opponent doesn't put something down that can do that sort of damage, then I can just out-tank with Delta Reduction and Nurture and Heal and force them to deal with that, and then eventually put something down and then take advantage of the Mew. But overall, I think it's a very solid deck. I could see it. I could have ranked it higher, maybe lower. I don't know. But yeah, just overall very solid, I think.
Very nice. Moving on up, I believe that was everyone.
Yep.
Number 2, I have myself.
And I have myself, Mike.
I have Mike.
I also have Mike.
All right. We talked about my deck quite a bit. I'm not going to say too much that hasn't already been said. The only things that I really would have liked to see are Lugia EX, and maybe just like one more Mudkip, one more Marshtomp, something like that. There are really not that many more things that I could ask for. The double Water Call Swampert allows me to set up super fast, and my supporter line I'm super, super happy with. 4 Celios, I think 2 or 3 Copycat, 3 Linettes, 1 Mentor, and 1 Transceiver, 4 Steven's Advice. If there's a game where I'm shut out of powers, and I'm sure there certainly will be, then it's not going to stop my deck from setting up, and I think that's very valuable. Other than that, I think the strategy points have been talked about very well by the other people at the table, so I don't have much to add on that. And we will move on to Mike. So we have 3 ratings for Mike this round. Anybody want to take their stab first?
I kind of do, because I played against this deck a lot. We were testing. Like, Hariyama is very good card, very decent. Raichu is also very good. Houndoom is freaking broken. Being able to lock a stadium... Okay, he only has 2 stadiums, but he's locking 1 stadium. People are not taking that out until like late game. And almost every other deck in this queue plays like 2-3 Pokemon powers on their bench. Like, I can see only 1 or 2 that doesn't. So you're spreading so much damage with the stadiums by themselves. Hariyama Baby is tanking hits because of his Pokebody. Hariyama EX is taking out your cards. He has a big attacker on Bayonet on certain matchups. He has Raichu to like end the game a few turns earlier on spreading. And in general, like, he has less admins and less pals than the Blues deck, the Latios Hariyama deck. But the fact that he has Houndoom and like he can set up Houndoom every game, if he can set up every game, it's so strong. Like, many people won't be able to deal with this in general.
Gotcha. And I do want to ask real quick as a side note, what was Slade's rating this round? I don't think I got it.
Slade's rating was Slate.
All right.
Yeah.
So Mike, would definitely like to hear you talk about your own deck.
Okay, so I really like my deck. It's the most confident I've ever been. Every other power ranking that we've done, the highest I've ranked myself is 9th, and this time I've jumped myself all the way up to 2. I really like this deck. Me just sitting there sticking Cursed Stone the entire game is really good. I can do that turn 2 because I play 3 Scott, so I can just, if I get the Houndoom set up, I'll just immediately stick a Cursed Stone, and that's there the entire game until. In order to play around Houndoom, you have to hurt yourself so much to the point where like you can get overrun by my like middling attackers, but so like it's hard to play around Houndoom. Like you have to do a lot. Ironlock isn't scary until like you actually like play against it and realize how much you can't do. And the Banette line can help against some matchups. I really like a second attack on Banette too, just to do 60. It's really good, and I play 2 energy roots, so I can make that thing tanky. So yeah, I think if I can drag out the game so long that Cursed Stone can get knockouts just by itself, and Raichu can speed up that process.
Sounds good. Zach, is there anything you'd like to add about Mike's deck?
Nothing really. I think this one's just kind of insane. I think the combination of Hariyama and Houndoom is ridiculous. It's one of the strongest combos in this cube. So if you can get that out, then there are so many decks that will just fold to that. And with the number of Scott and the amount of consistency that are in this deck, I don't think there will be any trouble either setting that up or just getting the stadium he needs into play. It might have been nice to see something like a Battle Frontier or something, but Cursed Stone is probably a little better in practice. So overall, it's just very good.
Very nice. All right, number 1 slot. Seems that most of us agree on this one, but we will go through one by one. I have Zach.
I do too.
I have A.S. Robertson.
I have Zach.
And Ace Robertson, I think, also has Zach.
I
A.S.
believe he
Robertson
has
has me as well. I stopped myself from getting the.
Oh my god.
to.
Well, it's the second time getting 4 people to vote for you for first place.
This
Hey.
is.
It worked out well last time, so.
All right, so to talk about Zach's deck a little bit, we've talked about the strategy a lot, but we haven't talked about the deck specifically because it's only come up once. So, super thick Meganium line, great kit of attackers. Only thing that this deck could really want that it doesn't have is something that I think is a limitation of the stage 2, and that's just a gigantic attacker, like Zach has already talked about. He's not going to be able to swing for 150 or 200 damage unless his opponent is already able to do that by copying it with Mew, but in general, I don't think that's enough to hold the deck back, because if his opponent is in a situation where they're able to use attackers like that, then Zach can use them as well. So the only thing that I think could be a struggle in that case is just getting enough Holin's Pokemon onto his own Pokemon to be able to respond with those attacks, because he doesn't have any basic water, basic fire, anything like that that would allow him to easily respond to a Lugia or Latias Star or a Latios Star. All those energy types are kind of foreign to his deck. And as a result of that, he's going to need a double Holin's Castform. It's going to take a couple turns of setup, but he does have the speed advantage because of the Meganium, so a lot of the time he's going to have the opportunity to get those extra energy on his Pokemon in advance, and it's going to make it so that he's able to get that double Holin's Castform if he needs it. Mike, would you like to add anything?
I really like this deck. It has a good matchup against Swampert because the EX1 is weak to it. And there's both the Swampert are placed pretty high here, so there's a good chance if he's going to go on a run, he's playing against a Swampert deck in his run. Yeah, I really like this deck, and there's just not anything wrong with it, really.
Very cool. Davi, would you like to add anything about Zach's deck?
I think Meganium itself, like Meganium EX, is a very good attacker too. Like, you can't forget that one. There's not many like grass weaknesses. He can hit on the mirror because Meganium is also weak to grass. She's only weak to Muck and herself, so those are and fire types, but those aren't. There's not many decks with those types, and he has a lot of other attackers. His attacks are like the level of his opponent's deck. Like, he always attacks with Mew for like low if he's playing, I don't know, against Spread, or high if he's playing against the Swampert decks. But overall, I can see like 1 or 2 decks being like trouble for this one Meganium 2-box deck, because everyone else is just getting blown off the water.
All right. So that is our list. We have 5 rankings for everybody. So as usual, we will take a quick break to tally up that aggregate ranking, and we will be right back. And we are back with our aggregate rankings. This time, things were actually pretty close. A lot of people did not shift up and down from where they were placed on the tally list before, so pretty interesting. And very few ties as well. But we will be starting with a tie. Tied for 15th, we have Luigi Nico and One Pint Paul with Rockless Lock and Ampharos Raichu at 74 points. At 14, we have Zach Porlier with Rye with 67 points. At 13, we have Odysseus with Flagon, Meganium, Bayonet, Evolutions, 61 points. 12, we have Slower Car 42, Tyranitar Pidgeot, 58 points. 11, we have Blue Cheesecake, Blaziken Arcanine, 56 points. 10, Quartz, Muck Mightyena at 48 points. 9th, we have JL with Meganium Nidoqueen at 47 points. At 8th, we have Deogenerate with Gardevoir Bayonet Evolutions at 38 points. Vent with Meta Knight at 34 points. Number 6 is Blue with Hariyama Latios EX Disruption at 30 points. Number 5 is Davi D'Souza with Swampert Toolbox at 26 points. Number 4 is Slight with Swampert Toolbox as well at 19 points. Number 3, Mike Gibbs with Hariyama Houndoom Bayonet Raichu, 16 points. Number 2, Slade, A.S. Robertson with Scoopgon at 15 points, edging out Mike by 1. And at number 1 for the second league, not in a row, but second league, is Z Kreckler with Meganium Toolbox, 7 points. Pretty unanimous consensus on that deck's placement. What are you guys' thoughts overall on these rankings?
The deck quality this time is super good. Like, anyone on the top 10, top 12 is going to have a very hard matchup against everyone else because every deck is kind of scary. There are many different decks, like there are two Swampert toolbox kind of close to another, but the rest of it is like very different and very creative deck building I've seen. I'm really happy with the decks this time.
Very nice. Zach, what are your thoughts on this league?
Yeah, so overall, I think just the deck quality is very strong. Like you said, you could see even very low-ranked people here relatively could just go on a run and do very well in this event, I think. Yeah, just overall, I think people did a really good job this time around.
Definitely agree with that.
Yeah, besides weakness, I don't think there's any deck I'll sit there and say, oh, well, I should just win this.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
even if you have weakness, like there's so many different, like there are very few decks in this one, which I think makes it really neat, that are just like one type, do this. Most things are toolboxy in a way. There's a lot of different things going on, so I think it should make for some very interesting games itself as well.
Yeah, people are looking around and seeing their options and working with that, which I think is great to see. It means I think people are improving overall, and they really took this league very well in the way that the format of the time was designed and was played. Decks very often did have lots of different options. One thing that I will point out already is that we've had about 5 matches played at the time of this video, and there have already been, I think, 2 or 3 upsets. So we're getting a head start on being wrong this time. Before we've even put the video out, we are already wrong, at least on some things. But I think that's where a lot of the fun comes in, just seeing where we're wrong. And we will definitely have a video out about where we were wrong last league as well. So look forward to that. But thank you to everyone who has come and talked about the power rankings this time. Davi, it was a great time having you on, hearing you talk about your cube, hearing you talk about the way that decks were played in the era, and hearing your evaluation versus some of ours. I know that we have very specific opinions as cube players, drafters, builders ourselves. Like Mike really favors a lock strategies, and Zach and I definitely favor kind of acceleration and diverse strategies like that, but more focused. So it was great to hear another perspective, and I think that you brought a lot to the table. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun. Really wanted to do any of those at some point, so very happy to do it.
Awesome. And of course, thank you to Zach and Mike for coming on as always. Hopefully we'll have Slade again next time, because it's always nice to have his commentary as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.